Welcome to the Healing Circle. I'm Christine, founder of Embodied Energy Wellness, a shamanic energy practitioner and soul guide. This is a space for honest conversations about healing, awakening, and the moments that shape us. We all carry a story, and this is a place where those stories can be shared, witnessed, and gently healed, together in community. This isn't about fixing yourself, it's about remembering yourself. Take a deep breath. You're very welcome here. Just a gentle note before we begin, some topics discussed in this episode may touch on trauma, loss, or sensitive life experiences. Please take care of yourself as you listen and engage in a way that feels supportive. Hello and welcome back to the Healing Circle podcast. Today's conversation is a deeply personal one. I want to speak about the kind of grief that many people carry silently. The grief of grieving someone who is still walking this earth. Because not all grief comes from death. And I don't think a lot of people speak about this. Sometimes grief comes through distance, in the form of addiction, of estrangement, of emotional disconnection, or becoming strangers to people who once felt deeply connected to you. And sometimes the hardest part is that the world doesn't recognize this kind of pain. I have met so many of my clients that are still mourning people that are walking this earth. And I think the reason that there's a bit of a shame around it is because, well, that person hasn't died. They're still there. They're still alive. It doesn't take away from the pain. Many of my clients come to me, they've fallen out with their children, their parents, or they're going through their parents' experiencing dementia, that the parents don't even know who they are. That is a form of grieving somebody that is still walking this earth. And I think it's really, really tough. I have done it myself. It's actually one of the hardest forms of grief. There's no roadmap, there's no closure. Yet your nervous system, your heart, your soul still feels the loss. And I think there is deep shame around it when people say, they're still here. It doesn't take away from the pain. I've experienced this grief in different ways in my life, particularly one with my father. So if you can imagine, and I think a lot of listeners can understand this, when you're a child, you think your parents are the bee's knees. You look up to them, they are your hero. Particularly my dad was until I was 11 or 12. And then suddenly his mental health started shifting. He started being very abusive. He started being very angry. He started drinking a lot. He would always be out of the family home. He would circle the Lonely Hearts column paper and leave it on the kitchen table. I don't know whether that was a mind mess thing with my mom or he actually was going out and meeting other women. I don't know. But the father-daughter relationship started getting further and further away from what it used to be. And that was purely because as a child, in order to spiritually protect ourselves, we step away, don't we? We go inwards, we suppress our emotions, and we shut down. Basically, that's what I did. I shut down from my emotions because I didn't know how to deal with it. As the years went by, mom and dad split up after he was particularly more abusive to me. And then he moved out of the family home. And then it was, didn't see him for years. But that didn't take away from the grief. Every family I would be in, calling into my friends' families, and the dad would be amazing. He'd be the hero of the family. He'd be doing things. Obviously, me looking from outside in and rose-tinted glasses reminded me of the absence of my dad. Every time when I needed someone to support me or have my back, the absence of my dad was huge. And I didn't see him for years. And then, towards the end, near the end of his life, when I started having children, I started reaching out every couple of months to meet up. And at that stage, my dad was completely wasn't talking, completely shut down. I could see this heavy, dark cloud just wrapped around him. He'd be quiet. The only thing we would say is, "All right, how are you, Dad?" And he would just say, "Fine." and he would stare off into space. And I knew, maybe it was a schizophrenia, but I knew he was having a conversation with himself, which then caused me to be in panic mode because I didn't know whether he was going to offer me to have another cup of tea or stab me, one or the other. So it was fairly scary, and the nervous system was completely on high alert. And then he passed over. And it's really weird the way this happened. I got a warning before my dad passed over. I had one photograph of him, and I don't know why I had the photograph, but it was in the dump corner. There's always a dump corner in the kitchen, isn't there? Where all the like the bills go and the envelopes go, and it was there. And I remember I was working in the kitchen, and the photograph just fell out onto the floor, and I put it back. And then it fell out again. It happened about 4 or 5 times in the space of 24 hours. And the last time I said, Dad, I picked up the photo and I said, Dad, would you ever stop jumping out in front of me? And I put it back. The next day, I got a phone call. He died of a heart attack. So I was getting the warnings, and maybe it was for him saying goodbye to me. I needed to ring him. We'll never know. But that's what happened. And I seem to always get warnings before people pass over, loved ones pass over. Anyway, that's not to freak you out, but that's just the way I get messages. But when my dad died, and I don't think a lot of people talk about this, relief came. I feel a lot of people are so ashamed to say, I actually felt relief when he passed over because number one, he's out of pain. And number two, I can kind of feel like slowly but surely I can move on with my life too. Because when you're stuck in this time lapse of grief and pain and suffering, it's like time stands still and we can't really move forward. Like I remember I wanted to get married, but there was deep shame around, do I invite my dad? Is it justifiable for him to walk me down the aisle? Is he mentally able to walk me down the aisle? Again, the fear of judgment. What will people think when they see my dad in the state of him? Like he didn't look well. So when he passed over, I did feel that relief of now I can get married or now I'm free. But mostly it was more about how he's free because I always understood how the physical and spiritual realm worked. I don't think a lot of people speak about it. And then after his funeral, the next day, I went on a hen party. I went away for a weekend on a hen party. And people on the outside would have probably looked at that and went, oh my God, heartless, what the hell? But see, not people understand this, but I was holding this grief about my dad since I was 12 years of age. And so when I heard the news that he passed over, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved my dad, but there was so much heaviness and grief around him that when he passed over, it was nothing new to me, this form of grief, because I was carrying it for so long inside my heart. So when I went to the hen party, what I was doing was what I've been doing for 25 years, which was repressing all the emotions that should have came bubbling up like an avalanche. Trust me, they did 3 years later because I couldn't sustain suppressing the emotions any longer. Not many people talk about it. Grief affects people so differently. And I think we need to acknowledge that and respect that. You know, someone might go to a hen party. Someone might go inwards and say, leave me alone. Someone might need people around them. Grief is different. And in Ireland, we are famous for our funerals. But what about the emotions? You know, funerals are big parties. What are we doing? We're suppressing our emotions with alcohol. How do we process these emotions? There's no rule book, is there? I also experienced though grief, and this has been coming up a lot with my clients, and I always say you can only heal people to the depths of your own healing. And I always think, wow, here's clients coming in that have similar journeys for me because I can bring them to the depths of my healing with that certain situation. And I love it because my guides are always like, here's another one. I'm like, okay, here, let's go. I can share my wisdom in this space and I can hold my clients to that depths that they are currently at. This one was with my daughter. And I think a lot of people out there, parents who have fallen out with their children, are afraid to speak about this. I'm experiencing a little bit of fear of judgment here. I'm not going to lie. Me and my daughter, triangle, okay? Split up with her dad when she was 2 years of age, with my current partner since she was 3. However, there was always this triangle between my child and my now husband, okay? My husband, in fairness, he didn't know what he was signing up for. He's never experienced a child growing up when he was younger. This is all new to him, migrating through it. Me, still reeling from the death of my dad, but also reeling from nearly like 13, 14 years of bullying from my daughter's dad. So you can see the triangle. You can also see the stress and the strain and the emotional overload. Also throw on top of that a makeup business that was triggering every single one of my fears. Complete and utter chaos. I didn't sleep. I suffered panic attacks, stressed out my absolute mind. And then I have my beautiful daughter who just wants to be seen, who wants to be held, and who wants to be looked after. Did I fail her? Yes, I did at that time because I didn't have the tools in place to step away from my own stuff and see my little girl. We always say we now are in a nice healed space, and we always say in our family, now that we can laugh at it because we've healed together from it, we always say, look, we just messed up in the first one, but we're taking everything we learned from the eldest and putting it into the next tree. And my eldest laughs about it now. But that was a long road. But I want to go back to when she left my house and moved in with her dad and his girlfriend and refused to talk to me and see me for 2.5 years. I have never experienced, I thought the grief of my dad was huge, but when it's your own child, I'm actually getting just a rush of energy up and down my body, even just remembering the pain, the loss. It literally took over my whole body. And when she left, I went into the dark night of the soul. I didn't leave my bed for a week. The bullying was still there from my ex and now his girlfriend. And let's just say it was kind of orchestrated from their side for years to building up to this moment. But I can put my hand up, I didn't help matters. But that sense of losing a child while they're still walking this earth and don't want to speak to you, that grief is something that nobody understands until they go through it. I couldn't say her name. If anyone said, "How is your daughter?" my whole body would go into shock and I couldn't even speak her name. My voice, everything just started rattling. So ungrounded. Like when I look back now on an energetic level, I was on the floor. I constantly thought about her. I constantly was trying to get her attention, tell her I love her, ask her to come back. Nothing worked. In fairness, I'm actually quite proud of my daughter that she was able to step away and create boundaries to protect herself. Looking back on it now. At the time, no. To me, it was a direct abandonment. But likewise, let's face it, I abandoned her for years when she really needed me. I don't think, parents are afraid to speak about these things. We always have to look like we have our shit together. But I'm going to tell you one thing. Nobody has a fucking clue what they're doing parenting. There's no manual. We're literally going through it literally by the seat of our pants every day, winging it. And don't forget, I had her when I was 19. So with all the trauma that I had, she was growing up with me. I was a child having a child. So this had to blow up for us to go on our healing journey when I see it from a higher perspective now. Like how many years ago? 10 years later, 20 years later. No, 10 years later. Sorry, I've lost a decade. So when I see clients and they come to me and you can see their whole body is rattling and they have carrying deep shame when they say, my child doesn't love me anymore and they don't want to know me. I feel their pain so much because your body never forgets that grief. Your body never forgets that grief. And like you could love someone so deeply and still feel heartbreak every time you think of them. You can miss someone who is sitting across from you. You can ache the version of someone that once existed, or you can mourn the relationship you wish you had. And let's face it, that grief is complicated because it carries love, anger, sadness, grief, guilt, hope, disappointment, and longing all at the same time. I'm not going to lie, some days are horrendous, and some days you might feel a tiny bit of a peace with it, but most days something small cracks you open again, like a memory, a photograph, the birthday coming up, a song. One thing that triggers is huge is silence. When you don't get a reply back in a text or they don't answer you when you ring, that's suddenly the grief rises back to the surface and you're back where you are. And for our journey of my story with my daughter, the thing that helped us was actually COVID. She wanted, little did I know, it wasn't all rosy in the garden when she was with her dad. But she, looking back as well from it now, she had to experience that. She had to experience that, it wasn't rosy in the garden. Not that I wished that happened, but it did. So she wanted to come back, but she wouldn't come back to me and live in our house. So she moved into a common ground, which was my mother's house. And I'm forever grateful for my mom doing this. And then COVID hit and nobody could see anyone. And it was always like, the immediate family. She refused to talk to me when she first moved in with my mom. But then I was like, this is my family home. I'm still calling up, seeing my mom. So she realized she didn't have like this. She was trying to exert her power, but that didn't work. So when COVID hit, I said, look, do you want to go for a walk? I'm not walking with you, or I'll walk across the road. Stubborn as that, and I don't know where she gets it from. So she stood on one side of that road, and I stood on the other side, and we walked. We barely looked at each other, but it was a start. And slowly but surely, that gap between us on each side of the path started getting smaller and smaller and smaller until we started going for walks where we were walking on the same path. And then eventually we started trusting each other again and started talking. First of all, it was surface level, but then eventually it started deep talks about how they felt. And it was a really long road. And what I'm just going to say to anyone that's going through that, particularly estranged from a child, is that time is a healer and everything is always moving. Grief is always moving. Perspectives are moving. Healing is moving. Expansion is moving. Understanding is moving. There's so much happening in the back that we don't see it. But eventually, time does help with the healing. She didn't see me for 2.5 years, and those 2.5 years were the most hardest 2 years of my life. I thought the nearly 25 years not talking to my dad or not seeing my dad was the worst thing. And then the universe had to just throw that curveball with the daughter. But now our relationship is so strong and so connected. It's the relationship that I always wanted. And it was purely because in order for her to grow and me to grow, I had to let her go. And I think when we keep saying that, in order for them to grow, I need to let them go. And that is for every parent that is going through anything with their children. That's when we release the control. Because at the start, I was trying to control that situation, getting her to come back home, getting her to talk to me. Where when I took the foot off the pedal, I went, you know what? I'm just going to let her go in order for her to grow. Didn't happen overnight, but it did eventually after 2.5 years, and we have the best relationship now. So I'm hoping that that gives any parent out there that's listening to this some comfort. I think one of the hardest lessons in life is accepting that we cannot force healing, awakening, or emotional availability in another person. No matter how much we love them, we can't force them to change. We can't force them to go on their healing journey. And I think that's the painful thing. But isn't that a form of us trying to control the other person? But healing sometimes looks like grieving the fantasy, the story, grieving the version of the relationship you prayed would exist. I wanted that close relationship with my daughter. I didn't get it for a good few years, but now I have. But we have to make a choice when to stop, when to let go of the reins, and when to stop abandoning ourselves while waiting for someone else to change. And that is when we move through that block. That's when things start to change, when we stop abandoning ourselves while waiting for someone else to change. And I've also learned this. You can love someone and still need boundaries. You can grieve for someone and still choose peace. And you can hold compassion for someone's wounds without allowing those wounds to keep hurting you. I hope this has helped somebody out there that's going through this type of grief. Again, if you want some help through this, you are more than welcome to get in contact with me, book in for a one-to-one, book a connection call, and see if I can hold you to the depths of the healing that you need to be held in right now. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week.
Thank you for being part of the Healing Circle today. If something in this conversation touched you, let it land gently. You don't need to rush to understand it. Your body already knows. Remember, your story matters, and when it's shared in the right space, it has the power to heal, not just you, but others too. If you feel called to explore this work more deeply, you'll find links to my sessions, retreats, and offerings through Embodied Energy Wellness in the show notes. Until we meet again, go gently, stay connected, and trust the wisdom within you. Thank you for being here.